What up? Welcome back to the podcast. Y'all are here joined by yours truly, everybody's favorite uncle, Uncle Don Don. I have my wonderful brother and co-host Paul, aka
Mr. Qualified. How y'all doing?
and spoiler alert, we got a new face here today with us. It's another good brother, but I actually just throw it to you to introduce yourself to the people. Who are you, my friend?
All right, what's the word, everybody? I'm Zach. I'll leave it at that. Ready to get into the chat, man. I don't really got too much to say as far as introductions. I mean, I don't really know where to go. Zach.
You also don't really need an introduction. If
Truly
I could
does.
give you one, I would say that Zach is a good brother. Zach is one of my favorites. Zach was my left or my right hand for a while working with NBMI. I know I've mentioned that a few times, but I affectionately call Zach Young Dean. That has been his nickname for some time and still his name in my phone. So all of those are little pieces of an introduction, but you are the type of person that really doesn't need an introduction. But for the folks who don't know you, we'll get into all of that. But
He,
yeah.
he like to be real humble. You know what I'm saying? That's cool. That's fine. We like humbleness around these parts, you know. But we'll talk him up because we know he won't do it for himself. But the first thing we will start out with, we always check in with each other, but with you as our special guest for this episode, we gonna check in with you. So what's been going on the last week, last couple of weeks, last month or so? Just what's new with you, man?
Man, as far as new, I don't even know where to begin. I feel like in general, I'm cool. I mean, I'm in law school, so after the semester, I'll be halfway done, which is amazing because it's very hard. I'm not even gonna lie. Like it's one thing to like go into something knowing it's gonna be hard, but it's another thing to actually have to experience how challenging it is. And I feel like this semester, I'm like, I thought 2L was supposed to be easier in the first year, and I'm not gonna say it's worse, but it's definitely not better. It's kind of in the same playing field. So it's tough, but I feel like it's been better because this last week I kind of just took a step back to like lift my head up from just grinding and like try to like really focus on like my perspective and just make sure like all the energy and effort I'm putting in is still like going towards something that's like my end goal still. So I kind of got time to just realign my perspective and stuff. So I can't complain. I literally don't have days off, so that's challenging, but I don't know. I kind of set myself up for it and it's nothing new. So it's all good.
Yeah, that definitely tracks. I don't know if I ever asked you what led to you wanting to go to law school.
And my whole thing, like to law school, is super untraditional. Like I didn't grow up thinking like, man, I want to grow up and be a lawyer. I think it was like maybe like my senior year. I was like, do I want to do law school? But at the time, I'm like, I was not ready for that type of commitment or grind. So I never took any steps. And I was ready to get to the bag, to be honest. So I was working for a couple of years at a couple of different places, and then I just kind of like hit that wall. Like when I moved to Dallas, I'm like, this is cool, but like, what's the end game here? And I like thought about what it was. I was like, nah, this not it. And it was literally like November, whatever year. I'm like, can I possibly go to law school next year? Um, I think like literally that night I made a couple phone calls, like did a little bit of research, and it's like, okay. I talked to Phelan. He was like, to go next year is not impossible, but I mean, if you grind, you can. So it was really just like on a whim, like let me lock in and figure it out as I go. And that's kind of just how it happened. It just kind of came to me. I ain't really like, ooh, I want to be a lawyer when I grow up. So it's working out so far, I guess.
Would you say that that's kind of been true for your whole life? I'm going back to when I met you freshman year, and literally everything that you said you wanted to do, you did, and you were a very clear-sighted but confident, but clear-sighted person to say, "Oh well, I'm gonna be on leadership team next year. I'm gonna be a TA next year." Like everything you said you did, everything you said you made it happen. But do you feel like you had a plan always?
Yes and no. Like I feel like it kind of came with time. First of all, back when I was like an undergrad at Mizzou, I was a wild boy and too arrogant calling my shots for some of that stuff because it could have not worked out for me. Like I don't even know how I kind of got in that spot, but I do feel like in general I've always been able to like or try to be like a man of my words. Like okay, like if I say I'm gonna do something, I'm gonna give every fiber in my body to try to make it happen. And more times than not, it just kind of works out for me. I got God's favor and blessing, so a lot of stuff just kind of falls my way, so I can't complain. So a lot of it is luck, to be honest. But I grind too. I won't lie, I grind.
I mean, I was gonna say it's interesting you say that because the one thing that always sticks out to me is when we first met, or at least started to build our relationship. The one thing that always stood out was you genuinely feared nothing. Like you said it, and you said it with it wasn't an arrogance, but it was a confidence of like, not just I have no reason to. It doesn't mean I think I'm going to succeed at everything, but I don't fear anything. And I think for me, it was like I don't fear failure either. So I just always took that as like, I think if you can, the earlier you establish that, especially as a black man too, that's an entirely different conversation. But the earlier that you cannot fear failure, I think that opens up a lot of doors. So when you say that even back in undergrad that you were, arrogant. I personally, as somebody, seeing your development, I never necessarily saw it as an arrogant thing or looked at it from the standpoint of it may not happen. Cause I feel like for you, even if it didn't happen, if it was something that you wanted, you were going to figure out how to make it happen. May not happen right away, may not have happened in the timeline that you initially wanted. But if you were going to get it, it was going to happen. And I always admired and respected that as well. Cause it's just not common, and it's not common for it to be carried in the way that you carried it. So definitely kudos to that. In case I never said it.
No, that's love, bro. I definitely appreciate it. I mean the whole like fear stuff, we've been over that a million times, but I think just like failing in general, it's kind of like my mindset always is like is you only really fail when you stop. Like I would be lying if I said I've never like failed or taken a loss or anything like that. Like I've had a lot of missteps in my journey, like a lot of missteps that caused a lot of pain. But it's like, I mean, if you climb up a mountain and you fall down, are you just gonna never climb a mountain again? It's just like, okay, every time I kind of like fall off, quote unquote, like shit, how can I get higher than I was before? I'm trying to do a better job of not cursing, but how can I like improve and just kind of like take the losses and just extract the lessons, and just keep it pushing? Because everything has not always been great, but I always try to figure out how to pivot.
Yeah.
I appreciate who you were at when I meet you, 18, 19 years old, something like that. 18. Yeah, Qualls, what you did not see is that little layer of arrogance. And before I really got to know Zach, and it's just a couple months, it didn't take long, but Zach was one that kind of had me concerned because he was so matter of fact and so confident. I'm like, you have no idea what you're getting ready to get into, right? Like, I want you to, I definitely have the confidence and vision to like do something, but the way he would say things so matter of factly and with a straight face, I was like, is he a serial killer a little bit? Like, that concerned me. But then once I really got to know Zach in that short time, I was just like, oh, I get it. He's unfazed by everything. Like, he knows what's about to happen because he's putting forth the effort. Like you say, you grind. I 100% got that from day one. But Velma would even be like, well, no, that was a little weird. But then you had a very, very cold exterior, and we had to figure out how to navigate that. But again, we're talking about an 18-year-old, But yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely had to work on that. Like, I was not, I mean, at 18, who really is like emotionally intelligent? I mean, I definitely was the furthest thing possible from it. And I feel like I didn't necessarily know how to like navigate my perception and how people perceive me because I kind of didn't really care. I'm like, all right, this is what I want. I want to make it happen. And at the end of the day, like, I'll just be truthful and candid and blunt. And like, either you like it or you dislike it, but you're gonna take it as this is my truth and this is what I'm telling you. So like it is what it is. But I had to grow out of that, I guess.
Yeah. Yeah. Two-parter for you. So the first question, what is what is the reason, or what was the reason at the time for what one might describe as the cold exterior? Was there either a string of things or a particular thing that kind of created that cold exterior? But then also, what was kind of the first situation or first thing that happened where you kind of learn how to start tapping into and navigating that emotional intelligence?
I mean, yeah. So starting with the second part first, it all kind of comes back to NBMI. Like I dedicated so much of my time, I guess, in school to the program because it meant so much to me. Like, of course, like the brothers in the relationship aspect, but even just like learning and forming my own identity. And like through that class, I was able to kind of like come to terms like I can define what I believe a black man can and should be to myself. Because like I mean, I'm from like the inner city, St. Louis. I'm not from like the worst place of all time or anything of the sorts, but like I'm not from a place that's green either. You know what I'm saying? So I feel like I was just shaped by my everyday experience and being where I'm from, where you just got to be overly mindful like who you're around and your surroundings because you never know what can happen at any moment. So I would just be hesitant to like connect with people, let people in, get close, and even just express myself because I feel like if I let people know how I feel about a certain situation, then they would have leverage over me and can use that against me in another time and place. So I feel like just that, and then just understanding just the whole idea of like toxic masculinity and what it, and then just having all those conversations like, man, like you don't have to be this way. You don't have to be hard to be respected and all those type of things that kind of like made me realize like I can just be myself in all scenarios without having to just have like that sociopathic, no one can read my emotions type of thing and still kind of like be cool.
Yeah, that makes sense, and I can see that.
Like I feel like even just before that, I never really was given the opportunity to like embrace and like express my emotions like the full range in like a healthy way. I didn't really know like you could do that for real. Like I always felt like, man, like you tough, right? Like you'll be good, figure it out, keep it pushing. Like it doesn't matter. And I think like just learning that my emotions did matter through the program, like changed my entire like trajectory in life. Cause like Donald jokes about me being like a serial killer, or whatever. But if you met me back then, you might actually would have been concerned because I was playing life like poker. No one could read me in any situation. So like, I've done a lot of growing from that for real.
And I'm one of like a challenge, so I was drawn to Zach for that reason because I'm like something is there. I got to figure out what's behind the curtain. But yeah, it was just a little bit concerning.
No, just a peewee, just a peewee. But no, Zach, I'm interested. What do you think truly allowed you to understand perspective on a different level? Like, I don't know if you had a certain idea or definition of it coming into college or whatever I don't know what age or what time is the distinction for you, but when do you feel like you kind of got a better or different understanding of perspective? Because I know for me, it was one thing to come to college, and for me, coming from a city and a state that isn't highly represented, at the university, that was the first kind of like culture shock. But I think perspective didn't come until I had to figure out what my identity was. But I'm wondering if you thought there was a specific moment where you were kind of like, I see perspective differently, and I see how I can see the world differently because of this situation that I experienced.
Yeah, it's crazy you kind of ask that because like I can like for real pinpoint like a very specific time in my life where I feel like everything's kind of like shift and change. And it was like the summer of 2018, so like right before my junior year, and right before a lot of stuff happened. But I think that's when like I just came into like a full and complete understanding of like who I am, why I'm here, and what do I want out of life, and like who do I want to become for like not just me or my family, just like I don't want to say the world because I don't want to be like a grandiose type of person, but like just how I want it to be, navigate through the rest of my life, right? And I feel like I spent a lot of time like being intentional, just asking myself questions and trying to really figure out like who who am I to me and who do I want to be for me, and just asking myself a lot of tough questions and like just getting to like the root and core of myself. And when I like it was really like a 3 4 month period where I was like minimum contact with the outside world. Like I was really trying to figure this out because I feel like, the moment that you like learn and identify your purpose and why you're here, like as long as you feel like for me at least that I'm walking in that path every day, like I can be happy with whatever the results are, and that's why things turn out the way they are because I feel like I'm doing what I'm supposed to do. So I feel like it was really that summer where I like just sat down and like learned like, damn, who am I? Who do I want to be? And once I kind of figured that out, that's when like the whole perspective. And I feel like when I went from kind of just like this to like, objectively speaking, like I just feel like I just started moving real different. Like what I start like achieving out of life just became a lot different too. Like that's when like anything I want, I could do.
That's right. That makes sense. Donald, anything specific or for you? When did that change of perspective happen or that change of viewpoint on perspective?
I feel like my perspective changed like in a major way because I feel like it's always changing a little bit, but in a major way was probably my second year teaching for NBMI.
Mm.
Because to Zach's point, when you think about like who you are, who you want to be to the world, all of those things, I mean, I wasn't as much of a poker face serial killer as Zach, but like we relate a lot on those things because I just feel like what's for me is for me and everything is for me. So, I mean, that may sound cocky, but I just feel like that's the path that I'm supposed to go on. I had not really had to think about the like rinse and repeat of it all. So now it's just like, who am I and how does that impact the 30 guys in front of me in the classroom? Like if I'm teaching about black male masculinity and emotional intelligence and social justice, like what's my place in this conversation? Not just a do as I say kind of thing. The first year because Zach was in my first class, that first year it was very much a copy and paste from the blueprint that Jonathan gave. And then I was given the verbal permission to like make it my own, which was intended from jump, but I was just like, these are too big of shoes to fill. Let me just follow with these little bumper rails I have. But I think my second year teaching for NBMI, when I really got to make it my own and I had a leadership team that I could create, which obviously Zach was on, that I think changed my perspective because it got me in a way of saying like, I know who I am and how I operate. Now I can legitimately help some other people do the same. So I feel like that was my major perspective shift at that time.
That's real. And that's interesting because I never necessarily think about, like you've talked about it, but I never think about like you've talked about trying to follow up Jonathan, but I've never thought about it from the standpoint of your adjustment to teaching. And I know you had like some teaching experience prior, but I think
Mhm.
especially with that program, because they say the same thing with jobs, like you got to be in a job a year before you can kind of really get a full understanding of what that can look like for you, like how you want it to be different or what you want that experience to be based on what the job entails. And so I I wasn't around to like see it within NBMI, but it would be it's interesting to think about all the things that you were able to see that you wanted to change after that first year. And I could see how that kind of like, open your eyes a little bit to what you wanted, like your possibilities to be versus just trying to continue what somebody else did. Which is it's kind of like in football when a team is lucky enough to have like franchise quarterbacks like back to back. That's how I see NBMI. Like for Jonathan to be able to hand it to you and for you to be able to continue what he started, but also your era is completely different from his era. And it's not to make it comparable, but it's just to
Right.
say that there was not a drop off, even though it looked vastly different. I think that speaks volume to both of you all, but then just to your point, like the perspective that you gained after that first year and moving forward. So yeah. Proud of you, Brett.
Yeah, me too.
If that was to me, I say thank you. But if that's to Zach, I say I support.
It's to both and.
Well, appreciate it. I actually have a follow-up question to that, and I was hoping a conversation would get here. This is primarily to Zach, but Qualls, by all means, jump in. So you talked about losing. You also talked about resilience, and then like learning from mistakes, essentially that you've made. What's been the best mistake that you have made?
Mm.
Hmm.
we don't frame questions around like that too often because mistakes are always seen as like super negative or you've lost something. But
Yeah.
sometimes mistakes are necessary and they are good. So I'm curious to know what's been the best mistake you've made.
Ooh, that's a good question because I really do have to think about it. But I feel like just thinking about how everything I kind of done, the best mistake was definitely starting a business that I had no idea how and what the industry was and how it operated. Because I mean, I was not a subject matter expert, and it was literally we were building a plane as we were flying it and trying to figure out how to make the fuel at the same time. So it was a super challenging time and task, but at the end of it, because like it did not work out. I guess it's based on perspective because like in the end it did. The experience I got, the way I learned, and like some of the skills I acquired from it, like how to just be resourceful and figure anything out without just having like an answer or someone to ask like, hey, how do you do this? That was like some experience and skills that I got out of like having and running my own business that like I couldn't have gotten anywhere else. So like it was a mistake to start a trucking company without even being able to drive a damn 18 wheeler. That was probably a mistake. But but the knowledge and the experience and the skills I acquired through that got me to where I am today. So I guess I can't really complain too much.
No, that's that's extremely real. My answer don't feel like it's as good now, but I hope it makes sense. But I think my biggest mistake was expecting myself out of others. Because it's applicable to everything, which is like a concept I'm just now realizing. It's funny. I was talking with my best friend literally earlier today, and Donald knows this. Zach, you know this too. But when it comes to like the brand, I've always struggled with this idea of what support I'm content with. Because it's never been so much about, it's never been this thing for me where it's like, oh, I hope it gets to all these people. Like I do want that to happen, but I know that I always thought that that's out of my control. And I never thought that like the people that are closer to me or my friends was in my control, but I thought that that was something I could count on because I don't need my friends to sell what they're passionate about to me for me to support it. Uh, and so like whether it's that, whether it's relationships, whether it's just friendships in general, that could apply at work, like in any capacity. You can never just assume that because you are going into it with this approach. And it's not even so much just about who I am as much as it's about what I'm willing to do. And all people aren't willing to do the same thing, and all people aren't built to have the capacity to do the same thing. So the mistakes I've made where I've went into situations like, oh, they'll do this because we cool, or because they know this, or because I showed them this, or because I told them that. I hate looking at it as a mistake, but it's helped me understand that one, always operate not for self, but with the understanding that you may be the only one that understands. So if nothing else, keep pushing for the reason that it's you, like you are the engine, and accept that you are the engine. But it's a mistake I'll never make. I'll make again. I know that. So yeah.
Bro, that's a real one because I had the same issue, and I feel like because it's back to the perspective it all ties in because you see things through your own eyes, so you're like, okay, well, if this is a situation, this is how I would handle it. I don't want to say you just kind of assume that's how the other person would too, but like I feel like it's a natural and almost like a right assumption to make, but it kind of never really works out in your favor. And I'm kind of like, I just kind of had to come to a realization. I'm like, bro, people are not cut like me. And I don't mean that in a good way or a bad way, but I can't expect someone else to act how I would in a situation because if I did, then like I just think a lot of people would do the shit I've done just in general and in life. So there's no way I could expect really anyone to like take the same steps or react in the same way that I would in any other situation. It's just lessons you kind of got to learn. But that's a tough one.
It's a tough one. Yeah, definitely a tough hill for sure. If I was to ask y'all what advice y'all would give to somebody who's trying to figure out how to navigate the bumps and bruises, what would that advice be?
Hmm. Man, I don't even really know where to begin because like I'm no expert. I'm still figuring it out myself. Like I'm still avidly and actively taking bumps and bruises on my own journey as we speak. Like I'd be lying, like, yeah, like I got it all down to a science. I know how to figure everything out. But I feel like because I've taken enough significant bumps and bruises, and it's always gonna be easier said than done. But it's just kind of like it's simple. Keep going. I feel like it's when like you get knocked down and you let it defeat you. That's really the only time when you actually lose. You got to always be mindful of like, what it is you're looking to accomplish in the long run. Like whatever it is you want out of life, how do you get there? And like sometimes something is not for you and you kind of get like redirected, and that's okay. And like sometimes I had to learn when you take a loss, like you're not gonna always win everything. You will take a loss, and that's okay. And when that loss comes, it will suck, it will hurt, and take time to like sit with it. It's okay to be like, damn, I wanted X, Y, and Z, and I didn't get it, and that makes me not happy, and that's cool. And after you give yourself that time and that space to feel those feelings, it's like, okay, cool. You probably might still be a little emotionally charged up, but how do I like use these emotions to still like get to the same end goal? So it's like after you kind of give yourself that space to feel your feelings, like you just got to keep going and like readjust your path however you need to.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think bumps and bruises are gonna happen. So I think one piece of advice is um, be ready to get hit again.
Mm.
'Cause I think if you get past one little bump, one little bruise, and you're like, "Oh, good, I survived that one." It's like, yeah, but it could happen again. The second thing I would say to navigating bumps and bruises is even though you're gonna get hit again, don't get hit by the same thing too many times. Because to Zach's point, you might need to sit and ask yourself, like, why? Maybe that's not the path that's meant for you. You keep trying shit, don't work, right? At some point, you do have to pivot. I'm not saying give up, because language is important, but you got to pivot. So I think in that, don't get hit by the same thing too many times because it's just like, am I the problem? I'm the common denominator. Maybe I need to shift something. And then that might lessen the bumps and bruises there, but you will get hit again. Maybe not as hard, maybe not with as much things, but like if it's the same thing too many times, there's some reevaluation that needs to come up.
Yeah. No, I agree with both. And mine is like in the same vein, but basically wear them. Like wear the bumps and bruises, wear your scars, wear everything that you've been through. Everybody not built to necessarily wear it on their sleeve. So I ain't saying show your hand if you're not somebody that's built to walk in that, because it's just not for everybody to like comfortably and confidently walk in that. But don't be ashamed of it either. Because see me, I'm a person like I will willingly put myself through the fire. Like I will willingly put myself in a fight that I almost know I'm not going to win. Almost, this actually sounds sick saying it, but like to test myself, like I know this is not gonna go the way I want it to go. But I want to, I'm not setting myself up, but I want to push myself. Like you can go for what you think, like what you want to happen, what is ideal for you. You can go in with hope that that may happen, but also go in knowing the reality is it more than likely will not. So if that reality does come to fruition, you're going to have to be prepared for that. And for me, it's a matter of not avoiding that reality, which is why I'm willing to put myself in that situation and go through that fire. But also, at first, I used to do that without being willing to wear the scars. So I had to realize that if I'm going to do that to myself, it's already going to happen naturally. But if I'm going to do that to myself or like self-induce it to a degree, I got to be comfortable wearing those scars after the fact. But I think what I've realized is wearing those scars has allowed me to be way more comfortable with transparency, way more comfortable with vulnerability, and really breaking down like those two walls put me in a space where there's nothing really to be ashamed of. And the earlier that you accept the reality, like y'all said, that the bumps and bruises like will happen, and that like you never stop learning, like you said, that like you're actively going through it, I'm actively going through it, like Donald's actively going through it, like everybody is actively going to go through it. It's just going to look different. You may not be, ideally, you're not going through the same things, or having the same bumps and bruises, but you're gonna always get a new little scratch, new little scar here and there. It may not always be a cut that's that where the white meat showing. It might just be a little scratch that's gonna heal in a day. You know what I'm saying? But you still gonna get some nicks, along the way. So just the more comfortable you are wearing them, however that looks for you, I think the easier it can get, or the sooner that it can get a little bit easier just to navigate it, as life goes on. So
And I want to follow up on that because I feel like you hit the nail right on the head. Because I feel like it's so much power in wearing your bumps and bruises. Because I feel like in today's society, everybody wants to have the idea and the notion and portrayal that everyone just has everything together all the time in every way possible. And I'm flawless. And the reality is, nobody is. So the fact that you can show up as your authentic self and say, like, man, like these are my battle scars. This is what I've experienced. This is who I am. That just gets you a whole nother level of respect because you're showing up as yourself and you're being transparent and vulnerable. And I commend anyone who does that in any capacity. So I feel like that's just like the complete opposite of what society kind of like makes cool to be. Like everybody wants to be perfect and flawless, and my life is amazing, but like that's really not how life goes. So kudos to you and those who actually do like proudly wear their bumps and their bruises for real.
with the theme of like bumps and bruises and just like navigating life in that capacity, how has the idea of identifying your purpose, how have bumps and bruises played a role in that? I know, Zach, you kind of alluded to that and referenced it earlier, but in terms of knowing that they'll happen, in terms of knowing that they're a part of life, within the things that you fail at or within the losses you take, how has that defined or shaped what you feel like your purpose is now?
And I feel like it's so crazy because like with that specifically, it's always easier to like see, how a loss or a lesson or a failure or a bump and a bruise fits into like the grand scheme of things and hindsight. Like in the moment, I feel like for me in all the losses I've ever taken or like considered and deemed a loss, I never really saw the value in how it like shaped my story until it was like a significant amount of time had passed. Whether it was like me like leaving or losing a job or not getting a job or like starting and losing a business, all these types of things. I'm like, man, like I just took a loss, not really understanding like it shaped my story. But like I feel like always having the context of knowing like this is who I'm supposed to be during this time that I have in my life and what I want to do and be out of life. Like I can just walk the path. I don't really know what's in front of me as far as like what's the win and what's the loss. I can just continue to like do what I feel like is the right thing at the time. And sometimes it works out. And I think over time I've gotten better at just kind of like thinking like, okay, like what's the saying? Sometimes it's not rejection, it's really just redirection. So like just having that perspective, like, man, like if it's not for me, it like whatever is for me, as long as I'm walking my path, will be for me and I will get. So if I don't get it, it wasn't for me to have. And while that sucks a lot of times because you may want something, it just may not be the right time or the right thing for you to have it all.
Rude.
Round of applause for that one.
Oh, we appreciate it. I do a little reading, a little writing.
Yeah, he's smart. He educated.
I think I give martyr energy. I think I am, I don't even want to say like I'm sacrificial lamb, but I think my purpose in life is to go through trials and tribulations to be somebody else's flashlight, floodlight to light the path, that kind of thing. So I have to fall on the sword first in order for the person behind me to go. I still definitely want to get to the end goal, have all the success and all these other things, but I think my purpose is tied in the mistakes I make because I feel like my purpose is other people. So if my purpose is other people, I have to come from an informed perspective, which by definition makes me a martyr. Um, So yeah, I can say like I experienced these things. This is what happened when I failed. This is what happened when I didn't succeed. This is what happened when I didn't pass through. You may not experience that 100%, but I can give you the transferable skills to say when you get ready to fall, because it's going to happen. When you get ready to get hit, because it's going to happen. This is how you can add to being resilient. So it's a very each one reach one when it comes to me. I hate that I got to fall first, but I would rather it be me because I know I can bounce back. I'm not always confident that the other person can. So if I can help that process, then I will.
That's very real. The martyr energy is interesting, but it definitely makes sense for you. It definitely tracks as your calling card. I would say mine is like relatively similar, but I think that a lot of the bumps and bruises that I have experienced were specifically meant for me to learn how to lead. And it's funny because that was also a part of my narrative in joining the fraternity. And something that was a huge challenge for me. Donald is very aware of how this is a part of my narrative. But
Yeah.
leading was always something that everybody saw in me, but that I didn't understand why. I didn't see what people saw, and I understood the weight of the responsibility. And for me, it was like, I I don't want to fuck that up. Like, I don't want to, leaders aren't supposed to fuck that up. And that was my misconception at the time, because leaders do mess up. Like, leaders do make mistakes. That's what makes them, great leaders. And so I think that all the bumps and bruises that I've experienced have been those things that, like, leaders go through this so they can be great. Leaders experience this in a way that other people don't, because whether it's the ability to be able to bounce back. And so mine isn't so much a bounce back, but I think the way that I'm able to shape my loss or my bump or my bruise and change the perspective of it allows me to at least be in a position to show others how it can be different. So that may not be falling on the sword for others per se, but it's the idea that, like, okay, I went through this, and like, you may have no idea about this experience, but that experience has allowed me to be able to be in front of you. And if you feel like I'm somebody that's worth respecting, following, whatever the case may be, that comes from me going through that. And you may never know that experience, but it's that experience has allowed me to play whatever role I'm supposed to play for you as somebody who is looking to me for some type of guidance or some type of resource or assistance or whatever the case may be. So that's kind of how I feel like my bumps and bruises have shaped what I think I'm finding my purpose to be. So yeah.
No, that's real shit.
Shout out to us. I know they always talk about, give people their flowers while they're here. I think we all have our own flowers. I am just happy and appreciative to be able to water them for y'all. So, and vice versa. So, shout out to black men, and
Yeah.
Black men is crazy.
yeah.
Another gem in the books, man. I ain't gonna lie, Donald. I personally feel like we on a roll. If you ask me, you know what I'm saying. But no, Zach definitely was the star of this one. I definitely think it's nice to hear that perspective. I mean, I think people appreciate hearing our voices, but we love to bring other voices on that we feel like people can appreciate as well. So thank you, good sir, for taking this time out of being a busy law student to yap with us for a little bit, man. We know you got a lot of other stuff you could be doing.
No, I'm glad to be on here. It's been a great combo, and I got to chop it up with y'all in a minute. So it's good. It's good for us all. Appreciate it.
Of course. Well, indeed. Until next episode, until next time, we'll catch y'all. Peace.
Peace.